Welcome to T4G Sports. I'm Daughtery Crib, and today we're going to give you our top 15 college football rankings. We're going to do 15 because 25 is just too much, and some of those teams, you're just throwing guys on the board. 15 is the sweet spot in our opinion because there's going to be 12 playoff teams, so 15 is right in that buffer where some teams are looking to push themselves up. This is going to be very exciting because college football has never been more exciting than it is today. It's actual talent versus talent now. It's not just political as much as it used to be. It was just so boring for so long because you really didn't get to see the best talent versus the best talent. It was so opinionated. And now we got, conference expansion. We got college football playoff expansion. We have teams that we're seeing schedule each other in the regular season since the first time since, the 1950s. And I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't around in the 1950s. So this is very, very exciting for me. And this is just taking all my love for football and absorbing all of it. Because NFL to me now, when I watch it, I'm like, this is just kind of boring compared to seeing all the traditions, all the trophies that you see from teams winning. The Minnesota-Iowa game, they're going for the pig. Just so much exciting play, rivalries that are second to none. And it's only going to get more exciting as the season continues. So we're going to give our top 15 rankings here. And not all of you guys are going to agree, of course, and that's okay. Let's jump into the video. And before we do, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, click the notification bell, and let's light it up. Let's go have some fun. At number 15, we got Missouri. Missouri is ranked 11 in the AP polls, and it's just something we don't agree with. Missouri's just playing sloppy football. They played sloppy football against Boston College, Vanderbilt. It's just not looking good. If you're a Missouri fan, you cannot be comfortable with where your team's at right now, particularly going into the rest of the season. The schedule is not going to get easier. You're playing at Texas A&M, very, very loud stadium. You're playing at Alabama. Those two could easily be losses for Missouri. You're playing Oklahoma. You're playing at South Carolina. Those teams could also beat you. Missouri could be looking at multiple losses when the season's over if they keep playing the way that they're playing. It's just sloppy ball. Brady Cook, defense, offensive line, they're doing okay, but the talent is going to get tougher, and Missouri needs to get tougher if they want to actually compete. So coming in at number 14, we got Clemson. They absolutely got tattooed by Georgia. The only decision they got to make in that game was, what ass cheek do you want this tattoo on? And that's it. That's the only decision they got to make. And I think the reason why Clemson is struggling, and they're ranked 17 in the AP polls, but I think the reason they're struggling, and this is just my honest opinion with you guys, I think they're getting too used to playing a cupcake ACC schedule. I mean, look at this schedule. It's an absolute joke. You got Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, Virginia, Louisville, who's a pretty good team. But aside from that, you got Virginia Tech, Pitt, the Citadel. I didn't know this was Rick and Morty was playing. They had their own college football team. And then you got South Carolina. It's just not a tough schedule. And I think Clemson is getting used to playing these soft teams and these soft schedules. And you're seeing it even with Notre Dame. Notre Dame is getting stuck with playing these ACC teams, and they're just not performing. And I think playing these soft teams is making these NFL players a little bit softer. And I want to see Clemson get back to what Clemson is known for being. And if you look at the last 10 years and just recruiting, Clemson is almost always in the top 10. I mean, on paper, they're great. Cade Klubnik 1 minute is playing great. He's playing like he was ranked. And then the next minute, he's playing scared. He can't see the field clearly. And so I hope that Clemson continues because on paper, this team should be playing like they've played in the last 2 weeks. I wish they wouldn't allow 35 points against NC State, but I think they could keep cleaning this up. So right now, we're going to give them the number 14 spot, and we'll see what they can do. But they got to start dominating these teams because Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, these teams should not be competing with Clemson. Point blank and simple. At number 13, we have LSU. Just a team that's struggling. If we look over what they've done this season, they lost to USC. Okay, that's the only team you lost to, and that was a pretty tough opponent there. USC is not an easy team to beat. That's for damn sure. Then you beat Nichols. Okay, nothing to crown you on there. South Carolina, you played at South Carolina. You beat them by 3 points. I'm not impressed. UCLA, you struggled against that team, and UCLA struggled against Hawaii and also got dog-walked at home by Indiana just 2 weeks ago. Got dog-walked. So I'm not impressed with LSU at this moment in time, and the only reason they are ranked where they're ranked is because you only lost to USC by 7 points. That's it. Aside from that, I don't think they're going to continue this being ranked in the top 15. You got Ole Miss on your schedule, Texas Texas A&M, Alabama. You got Oklahoma. The rest of the teams are not that good, in my opinion. I don't expect LSU to actually keep a top 15 ranking. I just don't believe it. I don't think they're a playoff contending team right now. I think they have to prove a lot more to be considered a true playoff contending team as the season moves on. At number 12, we have the Iowa State Cyclones. And some of you guys may say, what are you talking about? Well, they beat North Dakota. Not great there, but at the same point in time, you beat them 21-3, so it was a clean game. You went to Iowa and beat Iowa. Now, yes, Iowa does not have a great offense, but their defense is a top 5 defense every year, and statistically speaking, they're one of the toughest places to go and play at and win a game, whether you're in the Big Ten or even if you're the SEC, doesn't matter. No one wants to see Iowa on their schedule playing at Iowa. And so they went in and handled business. They beat them by a point, which is good enough to get that dub, and they deserve respect. Then the very next week, they play Arkansas State. Not a great opponent, but you still did exactly what a top 15 team should do against Arkansas State and beat them 52-7. We're going to put them at the number 12 spot until they prove otherwise. At number 11, we have USC, and I've been very impressed with USC this year so far. They're ranked 13 in the AP polls, but you beat LSU, which is not an absolute cupcake team of the SEC. Not at all. You beat Utah State exactly how you needed to beat Utah State. You lost to Michigan, your first conference play in the Big Ten. You happen to play in the biggest stadium of the Big Ten and the biggest stadium in college football as well. You haven't played Michigan in the regular season since the 1950s. I'm impressed with what I saw from USC. I'm impressed because if you know the Big Ten, you know that this was not going to be an easy game for them. Michigan can turn it on in a moment's notice. And Michigan's had quarterback issues, players, a bunch of players that they lost to the NFL, a cheating scandal hanging over their head. And they have a brand new team from the Pac-12 coming in, and what are they going to do? They're going to play some of their best football. And that's what we expected, and that's what we saw. Michigan turns it on at the very end of the game and has an epic drive where they just run down the field, they score on 4th down, they win the game. USC played great, and I think USC is looking really good. I don't think you want to see USC on your schedule. I hope they can continue playing the way they've been playing and just keep tuning it up and getting better and better and better. But welcome to the Big Ten. That's just the way it works in the Big Ten. You happen to play in the biggest stadium in college football with a fan base that's absolutely going insane because they don't want to lose to a brand new Big Ten team. They had something to prove. So I'm impressed with USC, and I believe they deserve the 11th spot until they prove otherwise. At number 10, we got Michigan. Michigan is just one of those teams that they're a violent football team. I know they lost a bunch of players to the draft, quarterback issues. You know, they have the whole cheating scandal that's just not looking good for them. At the end of the day, they're still Michigan, and you'd rather play them in the beginning of the year than the end of the year because they're a team that once they get going, they have the defense, they have the run game. They could play well against whoever they play. They're just a tough opponent. So we're going to have them at the number 10 spot for beating USC. We believe that they deserve it. Yes, they got absolutely crushed by Texas, but at the same point in time, Texas is looking pretty good, and it was in the beginning of the year, so it was a perfect storm for Texas. It really was. You don't want to face Michigan at the end of the year. I don't care who you are. You just don't want to, unless the wheels just completely fall off for Michigan. Michigan's still a scary team. And so we believe that they deserve a top 10 spot at this moment in time until they prove otherwise. At number 9, we got a shocker for you guys, and that's Illinois. Now, do we expect Illinois to continue this? Probably not. Being in the Big Ten is just not easy. If you took Illinois and put them in the ACC, they're going to be in the conference championship game almost every single year. Just how good they are. They send more players to the league than what people realize. And they played Nebraska at Nebraska. The Nebraska fans and the atmosphere there is just electric. They have Dylan Raiola. They're finally playing better football. Their defense is playing good. And what does Illinois do? They go in and they just have an absolute dogfight with them, exactly like Big Ten fashion, and they end up winning. And so, yeah, you have at Penn State this next week. Not going to be easy at all. You're playing Michigan. You got Oregon. You got Michigan State, Minnesota, Rutgers. None of those teams are easy to beat. And then you have Northwestern, who you should beat. But the thing is about Northwestern is the 12th man for them is the shitty weather. You don't want to ever see Northwestern at the end of the year on your schedule because the weather is just absolutely dog crap. That's kind of what you're up against here. Now, we believe that they deserve the 9th spot. Will they keep that? It's unlikely, but still, they are a much tougher team than what people realize. And so we're going to put them at the number 9 spot. We believe that they They definitely deserve it. So at number 8, this is the first time we actually agree with the AP polls. We got Oregon up there. We have them at number 8 because you're good on paper and you're undefeated right now, and you're starting to pick it up. Now, Oregon fans hated me at first. You guys hated me so bad because I said you shouldn't be ranked in the top 3 and you shouldn't be ranked as a top 2 Big Ten team until you prove it. And this is exactly what I expected to happen, except for I just expected Oregon to play better than this. I didn't expect Oregon to struggle against Idaho potatoes. I didn't expect them to struggle against Boise State and literally almost lose the game besides special teams. I didn't expect that. Now you beat Oregon State. Okay. All right, that's good. And then you played at Oregon State. Now you're playing like Oregon should play. Then you got UCLA at UCLA. Now you're going to be compared with Indiana because Indiana absolutely toasted UCLA at UCLA a week ago. They annihilated them. So you're going to be compared with that. Then you got Ohio State. Not going to be easy. Purdue, you should crush Purdue. Then you got Illinois. Not going to be easy. You got at Michigan. Not easy. Maryland. Not easy. Wisconsin. That's debatable. It's at Wisconsin, which is why it's debatable. You don't know. And then Washington, which is a rival game. So we'll give them the 8th spot here. Do we think they're going to keep it? That's kind of up in the air. Oregon in the Pac-12 teams are kind of doing what we expected them to do, which is struggled to beat the Big Ten teams so far. Now, Oregon has not played Big Ten teams yet, but they've struggled with non-Big Ten teams, so it leads you to believe that you better get on your high horse quickly, or you better get on your horse quickly and start to gallop fast and get things in order, because if you don't, when you start playing these Big Ten teams, they're going to sniff blood in the water, and they're going to attack the shit out of you. So you got to be careful with that. So we're going to put them at number 8 right now. Hopefully they continue to just get better and better and better because they have the team to do so. Oregon should be a top 5 team. Should be. Now, will they be? That's another discussion entirely. So coming in at number 7, this team took a hit. I expect them to go up, but that's Alabama. If you look at their schedule, you'll see, well, why would they drop? They beat Western Kentucky 63-0, South Florida 42-16, Wisconsin 42-10 at Wisconsin. They shouldn't drop at all. The problem is they faced South Florida at home, and that game was much closer than what the score dictated. They scored 28 points in the fourth quarter. They were only up by 1 for majority of the game, and then at the very end, they start squeaking out touchdowns. So it just was not impressive, and I expect Alabama to jump up this list, but Alabama just did not look good against South Florida. And it didn't help them that the very next week, South Florida played at home against Miami, and Miami dog-walked them, crushed them. So it just didn't help the look of Alabama. So that's the only reason that they're at 7. Aside from that, Alabama is a playoff contending team. Alabama is a top 4 team. It should be, at least. But right now, we had to drop them down just because of that South Florida game. We got Miami at number 6, and the big reason there is just they have beaten every team that they've needed to beat, and it helps their case when South Florida took it to Alabama for as long as they did, and they were playing at Alabama, and then you have Miami go and face South Florida at South Florida and beat them 50-15. They beat them easier by far than Alabama did. It's not even close. It was over from the start. It just wasn't a close game. So Miami right now is looking good, and we're going to give them the respect that we believe they deserve and put them in the number 6 spot. So at number 5, we got Penn State. And I know people will say, what are you talking about with Penn State at number 5? They struggled against Bowling Green. Yeah, well, Bowling Green, we're not going to knock Texas A&M and Penn State for playing Bowling Green and having a tough-fought game with Bowling Green. Bowling Green's pretty good this year. Now, at least in these last couple of weeks, they took it to Texas A&M at Texas A&M, and they took it to Penn State at Penn State. So Bowling Green's playing some really good football. And so, hey, if you're playing good football against multiple tough teams, I'm not going to knock one of these teams for struggling against them. I'm just not. So I think that they deserve the 5th spot. We're going to see what happens with Illinois. If they lose to Illinois, obviously they're going to get tanked. But no one wants to play Penn State. And the more they start to get their team firing on all cylinders, they're just a scary team. Simple as that. They are a scary team. So at number 4, it is what have you done recently? And Georgia's at number 4. Georgia just looks so sloppy against Kentucky. And I know Kentucky plays well against Georgia, but it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. Georgia just played sloppy against Kentucky. They just didn't look good on so many different levels. Now, if Georgia goes in and crushes Alabama or even beats Alabama at Alabama, they should be ranked number 1. I can tell you right now, they should be ranked number 1. The only issue I have is that right now, to say that you're the number 2 team after that Kentucky performance, to me, is laughable. I can't make sense of that at all. I mean, you have not played a true ranked team. I mean, Clemson, yeah, okay, but Clemson is just, they're up and down. I mean, to say you're number 2 because you beat Clemson, to me, is also a shaky argument. They're giving Georgia here the benefit of the doubt. Let's be realistic. If Ohio State played like that against Kentucky, do you think they'd still stay at number 2? Not a shot in hell. We all know it. Not a shot in hell. So, right now they're at number 4 for us, but we believe that if they beat Alabama, it's clear as day. They should be number 1. Now at number 3, it's what have you done for us lately, and we got Tennessee. Tennessee has done everything they needed to do against NC State, Chattanooga, Kent State, and they also they face Oklahoma at Oklahoma, and they beat them 25-15, which if you looked at the score, it wasn't that impressive, but if you watch the game, you would realize that Tennessee really didn't struggle all that much in that game. Maybe towards the end, you could be like, okay, Oklahoma was making some runs and what have you, but Oklahoma just looked outgunned the entire time. They just, from start to finish, you weren't really convinced that Oklahoma was going to do much of anything against Tennessee. Tennessee looked good. So for us, we have them at the number 3 spot. We believe they deserve it. The AP polls have them at number 5. We don't agree with the AP polls, obviously. Tennessee is looking like a pretty solid football team this year. At number 2, we got Ohio State. Get ready for this one. Because, look, I am sick and tired of hearing the shit talk about Ohio State from the announcers, from people. I'm just sick of it. Georgia gets a pass. Ohio State never does. Guys, if we're going to treat one a certain way, let's treat them all the exact same way. Let's just do that. How about that? They beat Akron. They beat the Tar out of Akron. They beat the Tar out of Western Michigan. Not a shock there. This is what they should do. They beat the Tar out of Marshall. Then during the game, if you listen to the game, you had Joel Klatt. Well, this run game should really be concerning for Ohio State fans. You spoke too soon, Joel Klatt, because they ended up running for 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns. Joel Klatt, you also said that CU was going to keep it close with Nebraska. What? In what world did you think that was a possibility? In what world? Brady Quinn during halftime. Well, Marshall could have really been in this game. It's a lot closer. It's a more competitive game than you think. Yeah, why is that, Brady Quinn? Your commentating has impressed me as much as your NFL play. Not at all. Sorry, not one thing you have done has really, truly impressed me besides your hairdo. I got to be honest with you, Brady Quinn. You've said more dumb shit than I could imagine. When I listen to you talk, I think, here's Brady Quinn about to say something stupid. That's my honest opinion on it. Brady Quinn hates Ohio State. It's so obvious, it's ridiculous. Brady Quinn was like, well, Marshall's actually doing good in this game. Look, Marshall came out and ran a quick, explosive offense. They threw the ball faster than an average of 3 seconds. Why? Because they knew that their quarterback had to get the ball out of his hands quick and in a hurry, so they just ran a bunch of crazy fast routes, throw the ball real fast, tried to catch Ohio State sleeping. And they did for a little bit. What happens with that offense? It wears down over time. That's what happens. So you expected, when you were watching that offense, you were expecting Marshall to do good in the beginning, to look better in the beginning, but you expected exactly what the outcome was, 49-14. That was the outcome. Once Ohio State took the lead and started beating the tar out of them, Marshall was like, okay, we got to start trying to play regular football, and they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. Ohio State dog-walked them. Simple as that. So to try and act like that style of offense was like so impressive when it's like everyone does that against Ohio State. Some teams do a little bit better in the beginning than other teams, but then they get dog-walked. It wasn't shocking at all that Marshall was playing good in the beginning with that style of offense. Also, look at Ohio State's offense. They ran screens, they ran quick slants, and they handed the ball off. That's all they did. They dummied down their offense for Marshall. They were not in fear of Marshall at all. Not even 1% were they in fear of Marshall. I'm sorry. They weren't. So that game was out of hand, and the way the announcers made it out to be, I was not impressed. I was like watching it and going, of course Marshall's going to look good with these quick plays. Of course they are. It's not going to pan out for you well at the end, and it didn't. It was simple. Just watch the game, no football, and then you'll realize these other guys are just talking heads. So, Ohio State needs to keep doing better on the offensive line. They got to keep running effectively. Their run game's looking good, but not great. Running back Quinshon Judkins is a monster. The dude's a monster. He is a typical Ohio State running back that you think of. when you think of Ohio State. Big, nasty, fast. He's going to beat the tar out of you. And then you got Trey Henderson, who's just faster than lightning. So you got a real good combo there. Will Howard hasn't even started running the ball yet. They have not really done a bunch of RPOs, so they're holding their offense and waiting for them to play like a really tough team. So they got Michigan State. They're playing at Michigan State. That's going to be a tough game. We'll see how they play against them. If they dog walk them, it'll be a real good sign for Ohio State because Michigan State's pretty tough. They're not easy. Iowa, they're just never fun to play. Oregon, that's going to be a good one. Nebraska, Penn State, those are good games. Northwestern, it just depends what the weather's going to be. Indiana, that's a good game. I'm actually excited for the Indiana game. I think that's going to be exciting for these two teams. Indiana's looking pretty good. And then you got Michigan. Michigan's a demon for Ohio State. They're just a demon. It's a rivalry game. It's never easy. So at number one, I don't think this is a shock to any of you guys. We actually agree with the AP polls on this. We have Texas. The big reason for that is they have beat everyone they needed to beat, and they played Michigan at the perfect time. It was the perfect time to play Michigan, and they did great against Michigan. Absolutely fantastic. Here's another thing for them as well, and this is going to also help with their power rankings, and that's having a backup quarterback, Arch Manning. I know he threw 2 interceptions, and I understand that. However, to have Arch Manning as your backup is very effective, especially as the season goes on, as you have already seen. Arch Manning is continuing to do what Texas needs him to do. And so right now, because of who they played and who they beat and how they've beaten them, we have to have Texas at number one. We have to until they prove otherwise. Now, they have Oklahoma. That's a rivalry game. You have Georgia on your schedule, and then aside from that, it kind of drops off. Then you have Texas A&M because like Vanderbilt's not that impressive. Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and then you have Texas A&M. You know what I'm saying? Like Texas A&M is good, but are they going to continuously be good? Is the question. I think Texas A&M can play well, and I think that being a rivalry game, it's going to be a fun showdown. So Texas right now with what they've done, they deserve the number one spot without a doubt.